Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for another poetry discussion. This again being a slice of life from Charles Bukowski, as it is in You Get So Alone at Times That It Just Makes Sense. This poem is on page 83, and it reads as such. The Player. I had 40 win on the 6 horse. He had 2 lengths in the stretch, was running along the rail when the jock whipped him right-handed, and the horse hit the wood, spilled, through the jock, and there went the race for me. That was the 7th race, and I considered that the horse might have lost anyhow, and then I considered leaving, but I decided to play the 8th. Hit 20, went on 5 to 1 shot. In the 9th, I went 40 win on the 2nd favorite, and when the bell rang to start them, the horse reared and left the jock in the stall. I took the escalator down and walked out the gate, where a young man asked me for $1 so he could take the bus home. I gave him the buck and told him, "You ought to stay away from this place." "Yeah," he said, "I know." Then I walked toward the parking lot, searching my coat for cigarettes. Nothing. And I think that this poem is a really good example of how Bukowski beckons us into the literature to judge him. Bukowski leaves himself vulnerable. Bukowski opens himself up not so that he might be judged by the reader, but because he should be judged by the reader. And in this poem, it is Bukowski that is reflected not in the wins that these horses make, not in the losses that these horses make, not even in the beggar wanting $1 so he could take the bus. But Bukowski is the jock that keeps getting thrown from the horse. He's privileged enough to have the money to play the horses, unlike the beggar. But he's privileged enough also to spit in the eye of life by gambling with his money, much in the way that the jockey is in a good place for sport, but is unfortunate enough to be thrown from the horse and land quite painfully, if you've ever seen the size of a horse and the size of a jockey. But I think that this is one of the reasons that Bukowski, for some people, myself included, is such an approachable writer. Being beckoned into a poem in order that we should judge the speaker is something that is vulnerable. It's guard down. It's hands in the lap. It's a shrug. And you don't get that a lot from poetry. The sonnets of William Shakespeare are very flashy, even when they are counterintuitive. And Shakespeare loves to do that. He loves to lead you in one direction or make you think one thing, and then take the carpet out from under you. The poetry of Emily Dickinson has a grandiose to it. I can't think of any humility in Emily Dickinson's writing. I can't think of any speakers with humility. There are speakers who know their place and know that their place is not the king of the world, but I can't think of any speakers who speak with a shrug. Billy Collins sucks, and there's nothing like this in Billy Collins, even though all the Billy Collins poems that I've read, besides, there's one about people dancing throughout history, which is really kind of a good poem, but I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, Billy Collins sucks, and his poetry does have an air of defiant That may have been an explosion of defiant... I don't even know the words for it. A defiant type of... Oh, no, don't look at me. No, a defiant type of shirking, perhaps. All the while begging to be looked at. It is seemingly, to me anyway, in my sensibilities, an attempt at the vulnerability, which is in Bukowski, that Billy Collins strives for. The Romantics certainly didn't have any of this type of vulnerability in this way in their poetry. The other beats, I think they were maybe approaching something like this. But the wonderful thing about Bukowski is you understand, he's almost like a comedian. When a comedian's telling a good joke about something that they screwed up, you understand that the speaker knows he's a fool, but the subject does not. Does that make any sense? Maybe a good example of this is Kevin Hart, who is often telling a joke about a life story, but his jokes are about him being so wrapped up in what is going on in the story that you know the speaker, Kevin Hart, the comedian on stage, is getting to a punchline and it's going to make you laugh. But Kevin Hart, the subject, the story, Kevin Hart, is completely ignorant to the fact that he's about to have a boob made of him. That is sort of the dynamic that gets set up in Bukowski, where the speaker of the poem understands, and that's why he shows you the jockeys falling off of the horses. That's why he shows you the beggar who knows, the beggar knows to stay away from this place. But Bukowski doesn't. That is why Bukowski, the speaker, is able to show you those things and lead to a punchline. That punchline of, then I started looking for my cigarettes, and of course I didn't have any. Bukowski, the speaker, is able to lead you there because Bukowski, the subject, I shouldn't even really be saying Bukowski because that's not fair, but the subject of the poem. We're going to stay with Bukowski because it makes it easier to talk about. Bukowski, the subject of the poem, is completely unawares of the fact that he's a boob. And this pops up time and again in Bukowski. It's one of the little places where you can wriggle into the poem and wonder where that turn is going to take place. Wonder where that switch is going to happen. Wonder on all those poems that you read through and you don't get them and you don't like them and you think there's just another Bukowski poem. All of those poems where that happens, did you miss the turn? And I'm certainly guilty of that. I don't know in how many of these Bukowski poetry discussions I've talked about that normally when I pick a poem for a discussion, I'll be flipping through a collection and I'll read a poem and think, oh, okay, well there's something there to talk about. Or I'll skip through it. But oftentimes in these Bukowski poetry discussions, I will note this is a poem that I normally just leaf right over, leaf right through, and pass by. Lost my place. There we go. But yeah, I think that that is one of the strengths, and it is a hidden strength of Bukowski's writing, that you don't know where that flip is going to happen. And oftentimes, my favorite poems of Bukowski are that I expect it to go one way because I know the speaker, but it doesn't go there. And there are times where that punchline perhaps never occurs, and it's just left to the reader to get there on their own. But that is it. This was The Player from You Get So Alone at Times That It Just Makes Sense. And I thought that poem was a particularly good example to shine a light on maybe the dichotomy between the speaker and the subject as well as the humility in Bukowski and why that works so well. But if you like this sort of thing, hit the like button maybe, because it really helps us out here on the channel. If you have not already subscribed to the channel and you enjoy talks about poetry, maybe hit the subscribe button. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments section as well.